Hi, everybody. How are you? Great to see you. Well, first of all, thanks for having me here. This is a heck of an operation. Your the total enrollment is bigger than most cities in America. And it's good to see you. I heard, Mr. President, heard you say, students raise their hand. Students, raise your hand so I can see who you are. Good. Well, that's great. Look, I want to start off by thanking Michelle for that introduction. But most of all, Michelle, for your service. I've been in and out of Iraq 26, 27 times, Afghanistan, close to a dozen. I want to tell you, volunteering for your country and spending 16 months in Afghanistan, which is like a moonscape. I mean, it's changing some, but it's a 15th century society. It really is a difficult place. And to put yourself in harm's way like that, Michelle, this country, we owe her a whole lot. We owe her a whole lot. My son, Bo, was Army, spent a year in Iraq, came back a decorated soldier, but when he made major as a field grade officer, I said, well, now you're a field grade officer, Dad, I still know who runs the United States Army. It's sergeants, it's E4s and E3s, 4s and 5s. And so look, we just memorialized again 9/11. Seems hard to believe it's 15 years. And I know how hard it is for the family members of the nearly 3,000 folks who are lost. But I also know what an inspiration they are to countless people across the country who are right now feeling loss and tragedy for other reasons. It's encouraging to know people who have been through hell can get back up. It's who we are as Americans. We get back up. And just knowing other people have gone through it and getting back up is hard for the families to relive that day, because you really do relive it as if it occurred that moment. But it also is an inspiration. And I know every member of the 9/11 generation who signed up to serve is also an inspiration like you, Michelle. Maybe some of you in the audience have as well. You know, you're part, Michelle, of the greatest generation of warriors in the history of the world. That is not hyperbole. This is the best trained military in the history of the world, the best equipped military in the history of the world, and it's paid a serious price. I carry a card, my scheduling card, that has, I'm on it every day, my schedule. But on the back of the card, I have my staff early in the morning, every morning, contact the Pentagon. And there's a little black box that says U.S. Daily Troop Update. And it says number of troops have died in Afghanistan is, well, roughly 6,700 died. No, it's 6,753, because every one of those fallen angels left behind an entire community, a family, a neighborhood. The number of troops wounded in Afghanistan and Iraq, it's 52,419, not 52,000 plus, 419. And tens of thousands coming back with unseen wounds, with PSD, traumatic brain injury, who are going to need our help the rest of their lives. The difference between this generation and my Vietnam generation was 70% of the people who were wounded as they were in Afghanistan or Iraq, had they received the same wound in Vietnam, they would have died. But because of the golden hour, they're alive. But that means that they're going to need lifelong, significant help. And we owe it to them. We owe it to them, not just for now, but 2 years from now. Their average life expectancy is over 41 years. So this is an obligation that we have to make sure we maintain. So Michelle, thank you. Thank you for not only what you've done personally, but for representing such an incredible generation. over 4,700,000 have signed up since 11. You have a great university here, a great community college. She spoke at your commencement last year, and as you know, she felt right at home. She teaches and is teaching now at Northern Virginia Community College. She teaches 15 credits a semester, no TA. She's the first second lady ever to work full-time, to the best of our knowledge. And she's teaching, she teaches English, and English is a second language, and she teaches writing. And she has a little envy for you math teachers. She thinks you can just check off yes, no, and she has to write comments, but I'm joking. Actually, I'm not joking, but I always point out, like for many of you who are here, professors, teaching is not what you do, it's who you are. It's who she is. And Jill has said, and I've been saying this for 8 years in the administration when we were running as well, every single day that I speak. Jill says the single best kept secret in America is our community colleges. And I'm here because Jill does everything she can to let that secret out. She's the president's point person he looks to when it comes to making sure that you have the resources at the community colleges. And as you know, because you saw her in Switzerland, she travels the world promoting community colleges because they are the single best answer for a developing country. Switzerland is not a developing country, but others were there. And so that's what I want to talk to you about a little bit today. Over the last 7.5 years, our economy has gone from crisis to recovery to being on the cusp of resurgence. Before I lowered my hand on January the 20th, 2008, we had already lost that month over 660,000 jobs. We ended up losing 800,000. Everybody forgets. We were hemorrhaging jobs before and after the election at about 800,000 jobs per month. And our efforts are now finally breaking through. We made, with your tolerance, an awful lot of very difficult, tough decisions, from making sure the banks were viable again, which is the worst thing in the world, is to vote for money for a bank that caused the problem, but making sure that they paid us back with interest, and they have. The government's made billions of dollars, and they've all paid back. I could go on, but the difficult decisions have resulted in finally, in the one thing Barack, the president, and I wanted to see happen. This is all about the middle class. Now, I'm always talking about the middle class, I know, and I'm referred to as middle class Joe. In Washington, that's not meant as a compliment. It's meant to imply you're not sophisticated, but I'm pretty damn sophisticated about the middle class. I know why we're the country we are. We're the country we are because we've had the most vibrant middle class in the world. I was with President Xi in Chengdu, China, having private dinner with him. I met with him more than any other world leader. And he asked me very point blankly at a dinner, just he and I, and we each had an interpreter. He said, "Can you define America for me?" I said, "I can do it in one word." I mean it sincerely. Possibilities. Possibilities. That's what's driven the middle class. The notion that there's a basic bargain, that if you contribute, you get rewarded. If you don't contribute, you don't get rewarded. Well, that bargain has been breaking down. And finally, for the first time in a long time, real wages are on the rise. They're on the track to raise 3% this year, for the first time in a long, long time. And according to the poll on Sunday that ABC had, you may have seen it on the news, 53% of the American public thinks the economy is on the right track finally. People are gaining confidence. But there are two things we need to keep this going. Two things. And I really mean this sincerely. The first thing we need is we need to have a significant investment in our infrastructure. Our infrastructure ranks 28th in the world in terms of sophistication and efficacy. The Society of Engineers thinks we have to invest over $1.2 trillion in the near term just to stay even. But that's another story for another day. And it used to be, by the way, the one political thing I'm going to say is, this is not your father's Republican Party. I was in the United States Senate a long time. Republicans used to be the leaders in investment in infrastructure, transportation, ports, canals, all the things that made us who we are. But the second thing, the thing I do want to talk a little bit about today, is every one of you know we have to have the best educated and the highest skilled workforce in the world. That's where a community college can be, because you're the most versatile educational institution in the nation. My wife has, says all the time, like I said, any nation that out-educates us is going to outcompete us. It's a simple fact. The reason why we did so incredibly well from the late 1800s through the late part of the 1900s is we invested in education like no other democracy in the world. We were the first country in the world that required 12 years of free public education, period. It gave us an enormous advantage over the rest of the world. President Lincoln made some really smart decisions called land-grant colleges in every state in the Union. The government invested in land-grant colleges. There's great ones like the University of Delaware, others not so great like MIT, but they're good. They're good. MIT's a land-grant college. And every single state, they exist, more than one. And it's been an enormous asset. And then we came along with maybe the most equalizing decision that has ever been made. After my dad's generation in World War II, what did we do? We introduced the GI Bill. The GI Bill. Any school you could get into, you could go. And all of a sudden, Irish Catholic kids like me could go to Harvard. I didn't. We could go to Harvard or Yale or all the prestigious schools. It broke down the barriers of class and access in ways that were really different. Another decision was made by a Republican named Dwight D. Eisenhower. After the Sputnik era, the whole nation was all up in arms about how we're going to keep up with the Russians. And we decided we need to have a significantly investment in applied research as well as pure research. And the report written by the group of wise men said we should invest it through the government, through DARPA, through departments of the defense, et cetera, et cetera. And he said, no. We should invest it through the great research universities in the United States of America. Right here in Chapel Hill, every major research university in the world. We have more of them, as many as the rest of the world combined. It's the reason why we have these enormous breakthroughs in science and technology. Really smart decision. And then in the early 70s, late 60s, we all of a sudden realized there is a niche that has to be filled here. And we now have a system of over 1,100 community colleges across the nation, educating nearly 13 million students a year. The average age, as you all know, in most is 28 years of age. Didn't go straight to high school. Were diverted for a whole range of reasons, from economic to societal to not having a desire. Think of the courage it takes, the people who aren't students, or I say the folks out there, to be someone who maybe didn't do that well in high school to begin with. And someone turning to you when you're a 32-year-old single mother and saying, you should go back to school. Think of the courage that takes. The courage, worried about, can I do it? My wife runs one of the biggest mentoring programs at the community college where she works. It makes a gigantic difference. In this case, it's mentoring for women, but it's not just women, to keep them in college, to keep them at the community college. But it takes courage. Community colleges are the gateways not only to an immediate job and careers, but also to four-year universities and beyond. That's why we feel so strongly about free community colleges I'll get to in a minute. You can cut 4 years of college in half, the cost. Folks, our education system is what's allowed us to leapfrog over the rest of the world. But now the rest of the world is catching up. It used to be in great democracies like Great Britain. You know, you took a test when you were 15. You either were going to track or not. You're in or you're out, done, determined with your access. But that's why the President and I have focused on everything from calling for the need for universal early education. Look, there are certain things that are, by most people, are no longer deniable. One is gravity, the other is climate change. You know, I mean, the same guys that deny climate change denying gravity out there, but, you know, I mean, there are certain things that are just basic. They're just not able to be denied. The other is every major study of every university graduated with $1,000 a year and then $61,000 a year as a senator. And that's a $2,500 tax credit per student. Over 10 million families in America have taken advantage of it. It's the difference between sitting at the kitchen table this morning and the husband looking at the wife or the wife at the husband and say, who's going to tell Mary she can't go back to Chapel Hill? Who's going to tell Mary she can't go, or John, he can't go back to the University of South Carolina? Who's going to tell, and I know I'm in North Carolina, who's going to, who's going to tell? Because it matters, man. These are conversations that are taking place at ordinary people's kitchen tables now. We also increased the maximum award for Pell Grants for students from modest incomes by more than $1,000. That effect has been immediate. That effect has been an additional 1.5 million students in college today. It makes a difference. $1,000 makes a difference. My problem with some of my friends on both sides of the aisle, particularly the one leading the effort on the other side of the aisle, they're not bad guys. I just don't think they understand. $1,000 makes a big difference. How many of your parents had a conversation this morning where one said to the other, we need new tires? And the other said, well, we're going to have to get another 10,000 miles out of these tires. You don't have the money for new tires right now. That's real. That's how I grew up. That's how a lot of you grew up. That's what a lot of people face. The other thing we've all figured out is 12 years is not enough in the 21st century. When I graduated 300 years ago in 1961, if you were innovative and worked and you had some brawn and some brains, you could live a middle-class life. You can live a middle-class life with a high school education. You work really hard. Not many shots now, man. Not many shots now. And by the way, with middle class, as I said, let me say what I mean. It means being able to send your kid to a local park where they're going to come home safely, being able to own your home and not rent it, being able to see to it that your kid can go to a high school that if they do well and get into college, you can figure out how to get them there. And when your mom or dad dies, you can take care of the other one and hope your kids never have to take care of you. That's middle class. It's hard to get there, man. Today, with less than 14 years of education. So our plan is simple and straightforward. If you have good grades, earn your way in, you get to go to community college for free, but only a community college that is quality like this one. No, I'm not being solicitous, because you have to be able to transfer your grade to a four-year college. If it doesn't qualify, then you can't use that money to go to that community college, and some other requirements. Schools have to show a track record of graduating students and placing them actually into jobs, in addition to making credits transferable. It'll increase the number of students attending community college from 6 million to 13 million students per year. So that would by itself, the other team and some of my team always talk about, well, we're really about is productivity, and those other guys just want to spend money and give money away. Well, let's tell you what. You add that many more people to graduate. You go out and ask any businessman or woman in this area. Find the most conservative ones you can politically and ask them what's most needed. They'll say we need a better educated workforce. Mark my words, ask. Well, guess what? If you just were to increase the number of community college attendees by the number I've just stated, you'll increase the gross domestic product by 0.2%. That's over time billions and billions of dollars. I'd say, Joe, it costs $6 billion a year, $60 billion over 10 years. My Lord, you big spending Democrat, there you go again. Right? Well, guess what? We ain't, it's, my dad used to have an expression. Someone come up to my dad, who was a high school educated guy, a gentleman, and say, Joe, let me tell you what I value. You know what he'd say? For real. He'd look at them and say, don't tell me what you value. Show me your budget. I will tell you what you value. Think about that now. What you value is what you allocate your money for. That's what you value. And so take a look at what we value. We value increasing the GDP, and we value the president and we value making sure that people have greater access to education. Well, how do you pay for that $6 billion? Well, folks, there's $1,300 billion in tax loopholes in the tax code. When Reagan was president, there were only about $800 billion. Find me a professor at any great university or think tank or Nobel laureate who can justify to you $1,300 billion. The only purpose for a tax expenditure, and they're good purposes. Does the tax expenditure, that is, you don't have to pay taxes on this, promote a social good, a societal good, like being able to own your own home so you can deduct the interest rate? Or does it reward people who take a chance to grow the economy? So you go out and you invest a lot of money and you're taking a real chance and it succeeds. Well, you shouldn't have to pay as much tax as the next guy, in my view, in our view, because you took a chance, you risked it all. But let me give you an idea. There's also things in there like a thing called stepped up basis. Now, I hope you understand what that is because I didn't. Stepped up basis means that if you have the money and you go out and buy $1 million worth of stock or $100,000 worth of stock, and over a 3 or 4 year period of holding it, it increases in value to $200,000 or $2 million. And then you decide to sell it. You pay on the gain you make what they call a capital gains. You pay a tax less than your ordinary income you'd pay because you're taking some kind of a chance in buying the stock. But you pay it. You know how much that doesn't collect every year? So let me back up. So you pay that gain. So let's say you bought $1 million worth of stock, if you were lucky enough to be able to do that, and it's worth $2 million now and you're on their way to sell it. You're about to pick up the phone and call your broker and say sell. And you drop dead. Well, guess what? Your son or daughter, your husband or wife, they inherit it. They should. But guess what? They don't pay any tax on it. It's called stepped up basis. The basis now that they start with is what the value at the time they inherited. And these are good people. Wealthy people are just as patriotic as poor people. I genuinely mean that. It's in my experience watching. Well, guess what? They're already wealthy. The last thing they need is another tax break. And by the way, the stepped-up basis shows no evidence that it's invested more or increases productivity at all. So eliminate that one tax loophole, for example. You can pay for all community college free, and you can cut the deficit by another $11 billion a year. So what do you value? What do you value? Growing the economy? Increasing opportunity? Free 12 years of free community college? Free education, 14 years? Or do you value a group of people that equal less than 0.4% of the population getting another $16 billion a year tax break? And again, they're good people. It has nothing to do with the recipients. So look, at this great community college, you understand it's not just training workers in the first instance. It's retraining workers over the long term. You know, I remember I started making speeches to college. I've made an awful lot of commencement and speeches at college, community colleges, doctorate programs, high schools over my career. And as if it was going to make everybody feel better, we started saying that in the late 90s, well, you're graduating and you're likely to have 7 jobs before your career's over. And people go, oh, geez, 7 jobs. I thought I was graduating to get 1 good job and stick with it. Well, the reason why you're going to have 7 jobs is technology. Digitalization is moving so rapidly. This front row here, you're going to be part of the most incredible exponential change in the world that any generation has ever seen. In the next 15 years, if I have anything to do with it, God willing, you're not going to have cancer the way you know it today. We're going to have cured whole bunches of it. You're going to see vehicles that travel around the world at over 22,000 miles an hour subsonic. You're going to see maglev trains moving at enormous speeds. You're going to see vacuum tubes that can take vehicles or trains 800 miles an hour. This is all there. You can touch it. You can feel it. You can smell it. The change is going to be enormous. But guess what? Whether you're a PhD engineer or you're a computer programmer, you're going to have to be constantly retrained. Constantly brought up to date on what is needed to be known in your field. And so think of all the people who've lost their jobs. There are 100,000 high-skilled manufacturing jobs in America. Now probably only about 85 left because we've been training, for whom there's no skills. So, for example, the woman who ran a machine that punched out parts 20 years ago for the automobile industry. Well, now you need to know a little about photovoltaic technology. It doesn't take more than 16 weeks to learn it, but you got to know it. You have to have you still have the mental capacity to do it. Just got to be exposed. That's why the president asked me back in 2014 in the State of the Union address to go out and spend 6 months identifying in a serious way, bringing in the best people in the country, what are the jobs of the future? What are the jobs that are going to be available in the next 10 years? Because 6 out of 10 jobs are going to require more than a college degree. A high school degree. Everything from a PhD to a certificate. But a high school degree is not going to do it. So that summer we published, after 6 months, a comprehensive report that recommended 50 actions that could be taken to make sure workforce training programs targeted industries where jobs are available and where the skills can be had in order to be able to fill those jobs. As the Secretary of Labor says, we no longer are going to train and pray, we're going to train and place. We identified what works. We did everything that requires from a 4-year degree to good paying jobs, as I said, with a community college degree to 14-week programs. We identified a number of jobs. For example, we need 500,000 IT jobs right now. Right this minute. We need 1.3 million IT jobs by the end of the decade. That's jobs like computer network specialist, average salary $60,000 a year. Software developer, average salary $98,000 a year. And by the way, these can be done everything from coding boot camp to 2 years of community college. We need 526,000 registered nurses by 2022. Starting salary $65,000 a year. You don't need a 4-year degree. As I said, unskilled jobs. Right now, you go from a manufacturing job that's unfilled. Right now, a welder A welder can start off at $40,000 a year, learning new techniques in welding. That's why we invested $2 billion in so-called, it's a real wonky phrase, TAC grants, Trade Adjustment Assistance Community College Career Training Programs, meaning bring together the community colleges have the capacity to train and the businesses and what they explicitly need in that region. I was up around Monroe Community College in Rochester, New York, 2 years ago. Kodak used to be a gigantic employer. Now they're down from, I think, 100-some thousand employed in real good middle-class jobs. They're not making film anymore. Optics aren't the same as they were. But there are 55, 60 small optic firms that are all around that community as what's happened is the changes took place in Kodak. So the community college with a good board went out and surveyed the community and said, what do you need? They said, we need people to be trained in special optics. So they brought in the machines, and in programs that were 15 to 20 weeks, they're placing people at $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year. We received one of those grants right here for $2.5 million. That's why you were able to partner with Siemens and Bloom and American Tech. It's pretty basic, as you know. These companies lay out their needs. They come to tell you what their needs. And by the way, as I said, the reason Siemens came here in the first place and didn't go to, because I spoke with the chairman, this is 6 years ago, however many years ago it was, they didn't go to Vancouver, Canada, they didn't go to other places because you had here the raw intelligence quotient capacity and the universities who could meet their needs. So they needed skilled workers to build turbines. Bloom needed skilled workers to make cabinet parts. American Tech required sophisticated molds and components for parts. Today, a computer runs almost everything, increasing the need for master mechanical and electronic as well as computer skills. So you took the $2.5 million and you made, megatech, you call it Megatronic. Anyway, it's computers, electronics, and Megatronics. And it was hands-on. 100% of the class is devoted to replacing actual skills that are needed on the floor. The salaries range from $40,000 a year after graduation, in some cases, putting them on a path to make $100,000 a year. Folks, this feeds a virtuous cycle. People with good paying middle class jobs, guess what? They pay their taxes. They spend their money on everything from the local supermarket to the movie theater to buying new automobiles, generating more jobs in the community. These are partnerships. They give people hope. And more importantly, a fair shot at a decent life. So let me conclude by saying this. We're better positioned, as I said at the outset, than any country in the world to own the 21st century. We're the epicenter of energy, the greatest research university in the world, the most adaptive venture capitalist system, a rule of law where you can adjudicate contracts and protect your intellectual property, and not made up by Joe Biden, the pro-labor guy, but we, in fact, have the most productive workers in the world, 3 times as productive as they are in Asia. We just need to give them a fair chance. Because given a fair chance, the American people have never, ever let their country down. I have world leaders quoting me after our meetings, and they smile when they do it. When they talk about, well, can you do it? I point out the following. I said, it's never, ever, this historical fact, it's never been a good bet to bet against the American people. Never. Let's just give them a leg up. You're doing it here, Mr. President. The contribution you're making is consequential, is long-term, and it is seeding in the notion that I hope takes root throughout the entire country, that it's education, 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 education. God bless you all and take advantage of the opportunities. Appreciate it very much.